Alright, welcome back to Season 5, Pick'ems. Not really welcome back, welcome to. I said that I wanted to do this, last season, but I'm here with Rut.
Hey, what's up? I'm here to do these pick'ems.
Yeah, because he knows a
I
lot
am
more than I do.
notorious, but I'm notorious for getting them wrong.
Oh, yeah, that too, but So, the season's starting on Thursday, which is from the time of recording 2 days away. So, so far, a lot of the teams are, for the most part, looking strong outside of a couple. However, let's rather than talking about individual teams, look at the matchups. Thursday to open up the season, we have the LA Gladiators and the New York Excelsior. Personally, myself, I see this just being a straight 3-0. What are your thoughts on that?
For the first one, right? Glads versus
Yeah.
Excelsior. Yeah, I think it'll probably be. I don't think it'll be a decisive match. I think the beginning it might catch people off guard. I think it could go like an easy 3-1. Like, cause this it's got some good pieces. Nixel does.
I mean, even if so, sure, they have Yaki and Gangnam Jin who have the experience together, and then they also have Young Bung who is one of the best players on Boston for the majority of its existence. However,
Like this team,
Nixel's never really
yeah,
looked that good since season one.
this team is definitely. It definitely does like look like a team that can like solo carry. Like it has a bunch of character not has a bunch of people that can like solo carry this team if it needs to be. But it's just, uh it's a challenge for the coaches to make them work together and can they be like the behemoth that is the Glads this season. Because the Glads got a lot of good pieces and they look straight up better than they did last
Yeah,
year.
because especially going with the initial demo from uh grand finals, which isn't really a fair comparison. But the Gladiators, especially Space, looked incredibly good no matter who he was playing. Like he even was looking natural on characters like Reinhardt, who he's never played before.
Yeah.
We also you have Ons, you have Shu, you have Kevster. There's so many amazing players that are on this team that I don't think Glads are going to be a team that teams will be taking maps off pretty easily.
Yeah.
It may go to 3-1, but I find that to be very unlikely. Maybe during push, but definitely not through control or hybrid or escort.
Yeah. I even think like their new pickups are like really solid as well. Like the Ons pickup, the Patafan pickup. Those,
I mean, really, the only issue
already
that I have
add
with
on to a
Patafan
good
coming
team.
to the team though is the fact that they already have Ons, and I don't think they really needed another hit scan.
They could use anyone they want now. Just adds more options and also takes them off the table for other teams.
I think that they're gonna definitely be having a really strong team regardless of who they play. However, I think that it's pretty easy to say that the Glads are gonna win, regardless if it's a 3-0 or a 3-1.
Yeah.
So here's the first matchup that I think we're probably gonna argue over is Paris and Shock. So I think Paris is gonna win this game, and the only reason I say that is because Paris is almost identical to what they were last year. However, their only difference is that instead of Onigod, they have Glister. And in my opinion, Glister is a much better player than Onigod.
Yeah, I think you're kind of right on that. It's definitely going to be it's a kind of a new versus old because we haven't seen much of this new Shock,
Yeah, we
but
Shock.
we've seen a lot of this old Paris, and this Paris is proven they middle to the pack to like above at sometimes.
Oh, I'm not gonna say that it's gonna be a far game. It's definitely be a close one. I think it all just depends on whether or not Shock's power came from their coaching or if it came from their players. And I think that the matchup against the Paris Eternals is definitely gonna show us what that will be. Because if they lose against Paris, I think it is just because of the players that they were so dominant. But if they do win, I think it was just because of the coaching. All right, so the last match of Thursday, Atlanta and Florida, 3-0, easy for Atlanta. I mean, really, Florida didn't look that great last season, and they really never improved. In fact, I feel like they downgraded almost everywhere.
Yeah, honestly, not seeing why there's like any hype for this team. Not saying like
They built it around
all the
checkmate.
players. I'm not saying all players are bad. Like you have Exy.
And
Exy's
Karev.
great.
Exy and Karev are both
Anchor,
pretty good.
yeah.
The rest I really
Just had to
don't
do
know.
all their good.
Checkmate I know sucks. Like, I don't think we need
It's
to.
nice to see. I mean, it's nice to see some of these people get like playtime in the league. It's just this team was definitely budget based. I feel
Yeah,
there
because
was
I mean,
not a
like
lot of.
Exy and Karev are really their only like somewhat decent players. Even then, Karev isn't phenomenal. I think they probably would have done a lot better if they had Mirror still on the team. But we know Mirror left not too long ago.
Like
But
other than that, all these players like they're just not big. They're just not big boys in the
yeah,
league,
they
I
don't have the
guess.
notoriety, especially to players like Atlanta, who a lot of them were very well known. I mean, like we have, like sure we have like new players coming in like Venom and Ultraviolet, who are also pretty well known on contenders, if I recall.
Oh yeah, OGE and Ultraviolet was probably one of the best support combos I've ever seen in
And then we
contenders.
also have Nero, who was the Shock's go-to flex DPS, and really kind of carried a lot of their team when it came down, like when it came up to big moments. So it's not like this team is like downgraded at all. In fact, I feel like it's kind of the same because I mean, sure they got rid of like Pelican and Iris, but at the same time they picked up even better supports and DPS to replace them, or just as good of DPS and supports to replace them. So moving on to
Yeah, no,
Friday, starting off Shock in London.
I think this, regardless of how the Shock do, I think it's probably gonna be a sweep for Shock.
Yeah,
Like in that,
I think
yeah.
London may take a map because honestly, London does have like they have Paco and Shax who were both pretty good last season. It's just a dependence on is Sparker still gonna be terrible? Will Hottie still be terrible? Uh, but even then,
It
they could
just
easily just play Paco over Hottie.
it just looks a lot similar to their last team. And I think their last team, it really was not that great. So I don't think, unless like the coaching had to have really stepped up,
Which I don't think they
like
changed
from
their
next
coaching,
game.
did they?
I don't think they did majorly. Yeah.
Yeah, so Shock probably gonna win regardless, but uh, there's potential that London takes them out, but I hardly doubt it. Next up is the one that we all would have expected to be Toilet Bowl, being Boston and Vancouver. First, I want to talk about Boston because Boston has a lot of really surprising pickups here. Having a really strong DPS line in with players such as Striker and Valentine. They picked up Crimzo from the Outlaws to just kind of round out a lot of their team. Although personally, I don't see Crimzo playing because of the fact that they have so many Korean players. But Crimzo proved that he could do it last season with Houston.
I mean, look at Punk. He got in playtime over uh Abel Gabe, and he was Korean, so I don't think it matters as long as you know the language.
Which we've never been able to see truly if. Because I mean, like we've had like you could go and like watch like stuff like the Houston Outlaws like game nights and stuff, and like we see like Crimzo like hanging out with them, but it's like like Happy especially did seem like he knew quite a bit of English, So I think it all just kind of depends on how this works. But honestly, personally myself, Crimzo is much better than MCD. Uh, so I think it all just kind of depends on what the meta is. Although I think that we do have to agree that like their DPS is 100% always going to be Striker Valentine, just because they have the best tracer in the league in Valentine. Although that's not to say that Vancouver is much more is as terrible as they used to be. In fact, they're honestly super strong looking this year, in my opinion.
I'd be inclined to agree. I mean, just look at this team. Like this looks. If you would have like showed me this team like 2 years ago, maybe not 2 years ago because I might have not known a few of these players, but like this looks like a team that like I don't know, like Paris or like Atlanta would come up with. It doesn't look like a Vancouver team.
Yeah, because I'm like they have Shockwave again, which is really nice to see. Shockwave was really good when he was on there initially. He was the only good player on 2019 Vancouver or 2020 Vancouver. My bad. And then you also have Aspire, who was really good on Toronto last year. Massa, who really stepped up last season on the Reign. Three really strong players. I mean, personally myself, I don't know False that well. Aztec, I am somewhat familiar with. Yeah, he was from
Yeah,
Toronto.
yeah,
So
it was all right.
he at least has like he at least has Aspire to work with. But Skyripa, I don't know. Also a support player, Psycho. We could honestly be seeing Vancouver finally start picking up some games on a regular basis rather than just against like nothing. Occasionally against like Florida, like pick up a couple maps, but never really a game. But I think Vancouver's definitely going to be like a lower middle kind of team. However, I think that Boston's still pretty much got this, but it's. Would you say it'd be like a 3-1 or a 3-2?
Mm, you could make it. I'm not sure. You go with whatever your heart feels like.
I'll go 3-1 because I do think that this team, while it is going to be good, I have really high hopes for Boston. But we all know how that happened last time putting Stonks into Boston and how well that worked out. Lastly, for Friday, the prediction that I always get wrong, the battle for Texas. I mean, do we really need to talk about this? Dallas is going to win. They're practically unchanged. They're still running. They're probably going to run about the same 5 for the most part.
Yeah, I mean,
like
they have their original 5 with like
scan,
other pieces.
they might switch out one for Edison or Grillo, but I mean, you're not gonna like. They'll probably play like either. They'll probably switch out Hanbin and Fearless occasionally, but Doha Sparkle are easy going to be the DPS starting. They have Fielder and Chio. I'm terrible at pronouncing. They have those two as their only sports, but a lot of flexibility.
Although let's not like look over Houston as like a 3-0. I don't think because it just all depends on how much Houston is upgraded. Like, can they deal with like a super team that was, or like last year's super team? I feel like they could probably take a map or so off.
Yeah,
Maybe
I don't
even
think
2.
that Houston will go down
It's
as easily as they used
like
to.
honestly, I feel like it could be a 3-2 because these matches tend to like go much longer than they need to.
Yeah,
Like they always tend to go the distance.
because like they have Pelican, who got the Rookie of the Year. They have Dante, who's always had a super consistent performance, and that performance has always been really good. They also have Iris, who is a really surprisingly strong player on Atlanta last year as well. Lastro, did Lastro play last season?
Yeah.
What team was he on?
I want to say Toronto.
Yeah, I don't remember. I know Lastro used to be on London, and when he was on, not London, he was on Valiant, right?
I think I think you're right.
Yeah, he was on the Valiant, and then he went to Team CC, and then he came back onto Toronto. So, yeah, he was on Valiant, and I remember him being okay on Valiant, but really the Valiant a couple years ago wasn't phenomenal. Then Merritt, I really don't know a huge amount, and then Piggy.
I know a lot of people like Merritt.
And Piggy was
So
really good last season. Hopefully the meta kind of stays around uh, Diva, because if it is around Diva, I think that Houston may definitely pull close ones, especially against Dallas, because Piggy's Diva is incredibly strong. That not a lot of people, and a lot of people honestly sleep on it. Here's a game that I think that you're going to be excited to talk about: Justice and Defiant.
okay, so I'll take the lead on this one. So I do think I'm just not that familiar with Toronto. So let's look. Mm, this team reminds me very much of last year. Like it's not that similar to last year, but like what they did is they got a lot of like pretty good Korean talent, and like last year they got a pretty much a lot of good Korean talent. But is that enough for Toronto to be above middle of the pack this time? Because I mean, I'm not downing like Twilight or you know Kisu, all pretty good. It's just let's see. I think Muse could be a pretty good tank, all around tank for Overwatch 2. But it's just, do they have enough to beat the Justice? I think, because again, Justice is pretty similar to last year. Like they got a bunch of good players, and they're
I do
kind
want to
of
input
like
on Toronto first, real quick. I don't think Toronto's going to be all that strong because, like, last year, we saw Hisu be really washed up to the point where they literally had to pick up a Spire a off of contenders just so they can play with the hit scan, and then
no, that was for something else. I
then why
don't
was it?
remember.
I mean, I know Hisu was not very good last year. Like he honestly was really
I mean,
disappointing.
that's fair. That's fair, but I think there was a different. I think it was a different DPS player that had COVID,
Actually, I thought it was
wasn't it?
Hisu that had COVID.
Was it? Uh, what was it? Trying to think. I think it was it Niced, or was it? It was someone. I don't know. Anyways,
I don't know, but
yeah.
regardless, Toronto's not really that. Like honestly, I feel like they downgraded. At least in their DPS line, their tank line I feel like definitely improved with getting Muse. Muse was phenomenal on Glads last year, and I was kind of surprised to see him be dropped from the team. But going into Toronto, I feel like is a super like strong pickup by them. It's just a matter of will they be able to succeed with them.
All right. So going on to Justice now, like. Okay, so we have Decay and Assassin as the DPS line, and we also have Happy too. So double hit scan, this team's gonna really shine, but I don't think double hit scan's gonna have huge prevalence, at least in the opening weekend. It might, but I think there's probably gonna be a lot of Sojourn, which is something we have to like account for. Like, do you think all these teams are gonna have like good Sojourns, or are they gonna be slow to it, or are they gonna just forget the character altogether, which they might do?
I think for
Although
the
I think this
initial
team
part,
also,
because you see with like when characters like Brig came out, when Bap came out, Echo, like they picked him up pretty quickly and kind of toyed with him for like a week or two, and then they kind of dropped him until someone actually came up with a strategy. So I think for at least opening weekend, we're gonna see a bit of Sojourn at least in opening day. Maybe all weekend, but at least opening day.
Yeah. Anyways, I think this team just has like the same like just same kind of build as last year. Like you have the really strong DPS. You have like the mag as the center and like the tank role, and then you have uh I wouldn't like a eh ishy wishy-washy support line. Like it's a support line where you don't really know what to expect of it because we don't really know too much. They could end up like really surprising us. Like last year, I think Bebe and Closer did better than I was expecting them to, but they weren't like blowing me out of the water. So I just, yeah, that being said, I do think that this team could probably beat Toronto. Because, like you said, you think they downgraded. I think they probably say the same, but regardless, I think that this roster, it just has so much potential, but
I think it just kind of depends on how well coaching can work, especially in Toronto's favor, because I agree that Washington will 100% win this game. It's just a matter of how close will it be. If Toronto's coaching is as bad as it has been, I think it may even just be a 3-0. It could be it'll probably be a 3-1 though. 3-2 maybe if coaching is really strong, but I do not see Toronto winning this game. Next up, we have New York and Atlanta. So we've already talked about both these teams. It's pretty obvious Atlanta is gonna win, but
yeah, I do think.
it's just a matter. Do you think that Nixon could take a map?
I don't think so. This team, when they get going and they're like, they know they can beat their opponent, they sweep. That's always been the Atlanta way.
Yeah, Atlanta's always been able to keep momentum, and I think going off of their sweep of Florida, they're gonna definitely be keeping it up going into Saturday. Easy 3-0 victory. Next up is the Glads and the Uprising. Definitely a scary matchup here. Uh, I mean, really, Glads are gonna win. Uh, that's my personal thoughts. But I don't think Boston's going to go down very easily. I think Boston will definitely bring it to map 5, personally, myself.
Yeah. I wanted to make a joke about uh, Uprising or Uprising always beating Gladiators, but lately that trend is kind of broken. So, yeah, just, I think probably 3-1 or 3-2. Could go either way.
Next up, Sunday, we see Vancouver and London going at it. Vancouver wins pretty simply put.
Yeah, I agree with that one.
But do you believe that London could take a map? Personally, myself, I don't see that happening. Although things could definitely change depending on how they look against the Shock. All right, Florida gonna take another loss this matchup against the Paris Eternal. 3-0 or 3-1, because really, I mean, Florida may take a map. They've been a team that's been able to take some surprising maps even when they haven't looked all that strong.
Yeah, sure. I'll give them a map. I'll give them the benefit of doubt. Maybe they catch them by surprise.
Because
They
I mean, it's
pull out
funny
the
seeing like how last year Florida was went like map 5 against the Shock somehow. Like Florida has been able to pull some really weird
and then
map wins, but
yeah, and then the time they beat Fusion in that one
choking
tournament.
is just their talent. The last two matches, Dallas Fuel and the Washington Justice. This is a matchup that you and I are probably going to disagree on, but
I don't think we're gonna disagree.
I think we'll agree because
I think we're
Dallas wins. I mean,
yeah, we both agree on that. It's just will we agree on like if Justice takes like any maps or not?
I mean, we look at Dallas last year. I mean,
I
comparing last year,
actually,
it's kind of hard.
okay. Think about this. We still have the. I know it's gonna sound very stupid, but we still have Decay on Justice, and we know how much Decay hates Dallas.
Yeah, we all saw
That
how
might
Decay how much Decay hated Justice Dallas last year, and they still lost.
not necessarily.
I honestly don't think Justice could take a map. Dallas just looks too strong going into this year. They
But
like,
they didn't change much. It's all about potential here. It's all about
but
potential.
neither
Let me tell
if
you.
neither team has changed all that much, and Justice got destroyed the last time they faced the Fuel. What do you think's gonna happen this time? Like, do you really think that the Justice will be able to take a map, even though they hardly took one
I
last
think
year?
I think a map. I think a map. All right.
And they faced Dallas last
If
year
Outlaws,
at a time when they
first saying
didn't
Outlaws,
know.
okay. If we were saying Outlaws is going 3-2, at least give Justice a map because Outlaws isn't like Outlaws
Fine,
and Justice are
I
pretty
will.
evenly split, I guess.
So the final game of opening weekend, Houston and Toronto. Houston's winning. I mean, I don't see Toronto winning this game. Toronto doesn't really have the pieces to beat major teams. Last year they did, and we saw how poorly they did with it. So I don't see this season being any different, especially with how much they really downgraded, particularly in coaching. So I don't see Toronto. Personally, I don't even see Toronto taking a map.
You don't?
I really do not.
I see it going 3-2.
I I would give them a map. A map is about as much as I can give them.
That's fair. That's fair.
I do
I
not see Toronto
I can
taking a
see it.
map five.
I can see it being like a sleeper of a entertaining match.
Yeah,
Cause like
that's what
it's
makes
just one
Houston really
it's
good.
one of those.
That is one thing I do gotta give Houston is they're notoriously great at giving terrible teams amazing showings.
Yeah, we got Toilet Bowl. We've got like every single Battle of Texas. You've
Yeah,
got
even when Dallas
yeah.
sucked, like you knew they were still gonna beat Houston. Even if that was the only game they won of the season, you knew they were gonna be beating Houston. So Houston's definitely a team that it could be some shocking like upset, but I think Houston's got it pretty handily going into the end of opening weekend.
I think you're in a Houston dub.
So there is the pick'ems for opening weekend. There are none for APAC because of the Chinese lockdowns. They will be returning in week 3. As we see here, East Region week 3. They will be returning. Hopefully that doesn't change because it would be a huge shame to not see teams like the Shanghai Dragons go out on the kickoff clash, which is the worst tournament name ever. So hopefully we get to see some really fun matches. And is there anything else you want to say?
Unrelated. Do they spell kickoff clash with a K or with a C?
With a C.
Ah,
Unless you're talking about like the word kickoff. In that case, it's spelled with a
no.
K.
I was talking about. Okay, yeah, it's right there.
Yep.
Is that completely unrelated?
All right. Well, hopefully these predictions aren't like super far off. I tend to somehow do that. So
Yeah, we're gonna find like the next super team, New York Excelsior.
maybe I can get Battle for Texas correct one year. Hardly doubt it though.